And about 3,000 men of the people went there, and they fled before the men of Ai. Okay, something's wrong here, right? Hello, and welcome to Applicata Biblia. My name is Mark, and thank you so much for stopping by as we get a little bit into God's Word. Today we're going to continue in our series, Characters in the Bible, or A Walk Through the Bible. And, as I've reviewed it from the last time, I thought we were going to get a little bit more into the journey of Israel in the desert. Now, if you're teaching this class, it's up to you as a teacher to make sure whatever important points you bring up during your class. You might extend some of your classes out to 1 or 2 classes or longer, maybe 3 classes if you want to include different stories that you think need to be in there. So this class is just a summary overview of the scriptures. It's not a deep dive into any one book. So I just wanted to put that out there really quick because as I'm looking at it and I started to review it again, I realized that we are actually past the time when after Moses died. That's how quickly you go through Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. It's pretty quick. It's just a few characters that you look at to talk about what's going on with Israel, how it applies to the Christ, and how God is dealing with Israel during that time. So in the last lesson, we talked about Joshua. Now Joshua, of course, is a very central figure to Israel during this time. Moses has died, and he is selected to take over for them. And it's a very good read. I would suggest that you read through Joshua. If you haven't read the first 5 books, read those. Even if it's just a light reading, you don't have to get in depth about it. You can just read it and just kind of catch up. And then read through Joshua. We're moving along pretty quickly. This second book actually ends with the Judges. And so it goes from Deuteronomy to Joshua, then Judges. And we just basically touch on a few people just to see what's going on in the history of Israel and how God is dealing with them. Again, that's all we're doing. Okay, so what are we going to get into today? Well, we're going to pick up the story in the book of Joshua. The Israelites go into the promised land. They travel throughout the desert, or the wilderness, if you will, for a period of about 40 years. And they finally make it into the promised land of Canaan. And they go in and they begin to conquer Canaan, as God has told them. This was their mission. Their mission from God was go in and depose the people who are in there, who are worshiping idols. They're sacrificing children. They're burning them alive. They're doing all these things. Go in there, remove them, and you take over the land. That was the land that was promised to Abraham. Okay, so we talked about Joshua, and we've talked about Caleb too. Caleb is very important during this time. But what happens? Well, one of the first battles that they have is at Jericho. Okay, now Jericho is a very important battle because they send spies into Jericho, and there's a harlot there who helps the spies, and her name is Rahab. And Rahab ends up being in the lineage of Jesus. And we don't even talk about that story, but it's important to know the story. That's the story where they march around this fortified wall 7 times, and God tells them what to do, and then they blow the trumpets and the walls crumble in on them. on the people, and Israel goes in and routs them and takes Jericho. That's a big deal because that was a great fortified city. So what happens next? Well, that's where we're going to get to. And we're going to see that even though people, the people have spent this 40 years, the generation that was rejecting, their faith in God was very poor. And God needed them to bolster their faith to trust him to the point where they would go in and do their mission. Well, they are ready, right? They're ready to go, and they're done walking in the desert, and they go take the big, the big Jericho. I mean, that's a big deal. So this is where we pick up the story, and this is what happens next. I'm going to read from Joshua chapter 7, and we're just going to read the entire thing. I think it's good to know the entire story, because we're going to see that there's an issue with their faith. Again, as I always say, it's not just so we can point a finger at them, because this is us. Same thing for us. There's an issue with their faith to a certain degree, and there's a certain amount of not revering God like they're supposed to. And this is a repeated theme throughout all of the Old Testament and even into the New Testament when you think about it. So let's get into it. Joshua chapter 7 at verse 1. And the sons of Israel sinned a sin in the devoted things. And Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, the tribe of Judah, took of the devoted things, and the anger of Jehovah glowed against the sons of Israel. Okay, so let me fill you in on that. When God's, in some instances, when he says, go in and take over this city, he'll say, but you don't take anything for yourself. Because that was common, right? That's common. That was common warfare. You plunder whatever you defeat somebody and you plunder them. It could be anything. It could be food. It could be money, like coins. It could be people. It could be cattle. It could be anything. But God, in this instance, says, you go in, everything is devoted to me, or he's specific. Specific things are devoted to me. Okay? And this is what has happened. So let's read on. Verse 2, and Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Beth-aven on the east of Bethel, and spoke to them, saying, go up and spy out the land. And the men went up and spied out Ai. And they returned to Joshua and said to him, do not let all the people go up. So they're very confident. So they're very faithful, right? Let about 2,000 men or 3,000 men go up, and they shall strike Ai. Do not cause all the people to labor there, for they are few. And about 3,000 men of the people went there, and they fled before the men of Ai. Okay, something's wrong here, right? And the men of Ai struck about 36 men of them and pursued them before the gate to Sharbarim. And they struck them in the descent. And the heart of the people was melted and became as water. And Joshua tore his clothing and fell on his face to the earth before the ark of Jehovah until the evening. He and the elders of Israel, and they threw dust on their heads. And Joshua said, O Lord Jehovah, why have you caused this people to cross over the Jordan to give us into the hands of the Amorites, to destroy us? And that we had been willing, and that we had dwelt beyond Jordan. In other words, when we are on the other side of the Jordan, we could have just been happy over there. But we come over here, now we're being defeated. God, what's going on? O Lord, what shall I say after Israel has turned its back before its enemies? Verse 9, and the Canaanites and all the ones living in the land shall hear and shall come around against us and cut off your name out of the earth. And what shall you do for your great name? And Jehovah said to Joshua, get up, Why do you fall on your face this way? Israel has sinned, and they have transgressed. They have also transgressed my covenant, which I commanded them, and have also taken of the cursed things, and have also stolen and deceived, and put it among their stuff. Not good. And the sons of Israel have not been able to stand before their enemies. They have turned the back before their enemies because they have become cursed. I will not be with you again if you do not destroy the cursed things from among you. Rise up, sanctify the people. You shall say, sanctify yourselves for tomorrow. For so says Jehovah, the God of Israel, a cursed thing is among you, Israel. You are not able to stand before your enemies until you take away the cursed thing from among you. And you shall be brought near in the morning by your tribes, and it shall be the tribe which Jehovah takes shall draw near by families, and the family which Jehovah takes shall draw near by households, and the household which Jehovah takes shall draw near by men. So we're going to get to the bottom of this. And it shall be, he who is taken with the accursed thing shall be burned with fire, and he and all that he has, because he has transgressed the covenant of Jehovah, and because he has committed folly in Israel. Verse 16. And Joshua rose early in the morning and brought Israel near by its tribes, and the tribe of Judah was taken. And he brought the family of Judah near, and he took the family of the Zerites. And he brought near the family of the Zerites by men, and Zabdi was taken. And he brought near the household by men, and Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, was taken. And Joshua said to Achan, my son, now give glory to Jehovah, the God of Israel, and give thanks to him, and please tell me what you have done. Do not hide it from me. And Achan answered Joshua and said, truly I have sinned against Jehovah, the God of Israel, and this I have done. When I saw this among the spoil, a goodly robe of Shinar, and 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold, one of 50 shekels in weight, then I lusted after them, and I took them. And behold, they are hidden in the earth in the middle of my tent, and the silver under it. And Joshua sent messengers, and they ran to the tent, and behold, it was hidden in his tent, and the silver under it. And they took them out of the middle of the tent, and brought them to Joshua and to all the sons of Israel, and laid them out before Jehovah. And Joshua and all Israel with him took Achan, the son of Zerah, and the silver and the robe and the wedge of gold, and his sons and his daughters, and his oxen and his donkey, and his flock, and his tent, and all that he had, and they made them go up to the valley of Achor. And Joshua said, how you have troubled us. Jehovah shall trouble you today. And all Israel threw stones at him, and they burned them with fire, and they stoned them with stones. And they raised over him a great heap of stones to this day, and Jehovah turned back from the heat of his anger. On this account, the name of that place is the Valley of Grief until this day. Yikes. Okay, that is a terrible story, isn't it? It seems very terrible. And what we see here, again, we have to put everything in context. These are God's people. It's a young nation. And they are supposed to be at a level of faith where they revere God. But here's a case where somebody does not revere God. And in fact, rejects God and the covenant that he had with them. Go in, you will beat these people, you will take the city, and there are certain things you're not supposed to take. but he went in and took it anyway. And so he suffered the consequences. He and his family both suffered the consequences. So, as we've been noting, it seems really tough, right? It is tough. And what we have, again, is a very young nation trying to wrestle with the understanding of who God is. And unfortunately, they're trying things, right? They're trying to get away with things. And God is very strict and swift in his judgments. And a lot of people say, well, is he just making an example of it? Well, you can say that to a certain degree. But he's only doing it so it doesn't continue to happen. And we're going to see that for all that God is doing in these instances where these kinds of judgments are coming down, the people aren't really going to learn very well. And I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. It's because we look at it and we go, why didn't they hear God? Why didn't they know? God did all these miracles. What's wrong with them? We say that. And it's like, yeah, we do the same thing. And that's always my point. My point is, yeah, that's us. We mess up too. And if you think you don't mess up, you need to think about that. And I always say that. If you think you don't sin, you need to rethink that, because John wrote a complete thing about people who think they're without sin. Okay. So I'm only saying that because these older passages where God just looks like he's being so strict and he's just overbearing and he's like this tyrant. He's such a tyrant. He's such a tyrannical God. It's like, again, these souls belong to God. They belong to God. Your soul, my soul, belongs to God. If he wants to take it, that's for him to do. Okay? All right. So, again, as usual, on the blog, I have a few quick little easy questions. There were 3,000 men sent to Ai to defeat it after this great, Jericho victory. And 36 of them were killed. 36 of the people were killed. They were thinking, oh, we took care, God helped take Jericho for us. And it was fairly simple. It went just like it was planned. We marched around 7 times and we did the blowing the trumpet things and all that. And the walls fell down. We took it. So we see that the faith level is really, really good. It's up to where it needs to be. Unfortunately, God is the one who sets the rules. And we don't get to make our own rules up. And I always say this. I always talk about churches and Christian denominations that just make up their own rules about things. You can't do that. The God of the New Testament is not a different God from the Old Testament. The only difference is that now we have Jesus, right? And when we get to Jesus, we're going to talk about how we look at it like Jesus makes it easier. Well, you know what? Really, Jesus makes it, he doesn't make it harder, but he makes it much more clear that how much it is that God requires of us. It's everything. Okay. So what were God's specific commands from chapter 6? Keep clear of devoted things. You shall not become accursed by taking them from the devoted things, and make the camp of Israel become accursed and trouble it. And the silver and the gold, the vessels of bronze and iron, they are holy to Jehovah. They shall come into the treasury of Jehovah. So those things were not to be taken. And we see in this case, in the case of Achan, his lust gets the better of him. He even admits it. And it's really a sad story, isn't it? Because he actually admits it. Joshua says, hey, you need to fess up if you did something here. And he goes, yeah, I sinned. And even though he confesses, he still suffers the consequences, and it's for all those reasons I've already stated. Yeah, he lusts after it. It's just too much for him. He goes ahead and steals it, even though it belongs to God. He readily confesses it, yes, once he's caught, right? Because you have the system where these, I don't know exactly how it worked, but you would have like a tribe show up, and then somehow God was selecting these people. He would select like the patriarch, and then the tribe, and then a patriarch, and then a family, and then a specific person like Achan. And it was like, Achan knew exactly what he did. That's the bigger issue going on. It wasn't like this was a sin of omission. Well, I didn't know. He knew exactly what happened. And that is the big problem here. And of course, the punishment and the consequence was that a lot of people suffered because of it. It says, describe how our sin not only affects us, but those around us as well. And the Old Testament is full of examples like this, where somebody sins and the sin affects a lot of people. And that is one of the big, that's just one of the big things that this story illustrates. And most all of these types of stories, it illustrates that, you might think that you're sinning and it's not affecting anybody, but the consequences could affect not only you, but your family and all those people in your sphere. And so that is the big message here, is think twice before you do something dumb, before you do something stupid against God, or against, and when I say against God, I mean anybody. If you're sinning against your husband or wife or a loved one, or even just somebody you don't know, you're sinning against God. Joseph knew that when he was being tempted by Potiphar's wife. He says, I will not do this sin against God. And that's the attitude, right, that Christians have about doing things that are not right, is I don't want to do this sin against God. Not only do I not want to do it against him, that's just not who I am. That's what Jesus brings to it, right? I don't do those things. Okay? That's what Jesus brings to the forefront in our thinking. So I asked the students to look up that word covetous, or in this instance as well, to have this lust towards something. Because this is a sin of coveting, absolutely. In other words, he wants something that doesn't belong to him. And it's a desire. It just means to delight in something of beauty, greatly beloved, a delectable thing, desire, goodly lust. So let's there's a fine line in here, right? There's nothing wrong with saying, oh, there's a piece of land over there, or I need a car, and that is the car I need. That's the car I want, and so I need to work toward getting that. There's nothing wrong with that. I really desire to have that car. I have the means to do it. No one's going to get hurt if I get it. My life will be better. My family will benefit from it. All these different things. There's nothing wrong with that. You have that kind of desire to better your life, to better other people's lives. Nothing wrong with that. That's not lust. That's not what this is. That's not coveting. Coveting is when it becomes this obsessiveness. And a lot of times coveting is you want something that somebody else has. And it isn't just that you want the same thing that they have. You want what they have, like coveting somebody's spouse, or coveting somebody's car, or their house, or you become envious in that sense. And that that one sin rolls over into more sin, and that's just the way sin works. And this is what the Old Testament is trying to expose, is how these sins just well up in the human being, and how they can become terrible, terrible consequences for the people that commit these sins. Then the other question is, how can one have a self-serving heart like Achan, right? He sees the gold and he forgets about everybody else and just sins against God. and profess to follow the example of Christ. So how can a person say they're a Christian and yet be really self-serving to the point of sinning? Well, it's when their faith isn't real, right? It's when a person says they are, I'm a Christian, but they don't love. Or they say they're a Christian, they don't even know what it means. They just think that means you're being a good person, which in a sense, yeah, that's a good start. But Christianity is much, much more than that. And that's what people don't understand. And again, that's the Jesus part of the story, is Jesus is the one who reveals the core of Christianity, which is the understanding that we are spiritual beings, that God wants us, that he wants us in his realm. But we have to be more like him. And so we are drawn to Jesus because he draws us closer to God. Okay, so there we are. I'm going to see if I can make up a graph just to show where we are in the Bible, in case, if you're not a Bible student, or if you're just a new Bible student, I'll try and I will get a graph up that just to show where we are so far. We've covered the Pentateuch. Now we're in the book of Joshua, and I think we're going to move pretty quickly into Judges, and then we're going to end book 2 in the book of Judges. Thank you so much for stopping by. Appreciate it so much. We'll see you in the next one.